This bell rings regularly on the Quincy College campus. More than 55 years ago, Bill Schulten was a walking, talking pep club, promoting school spirit wherever he would go. Often, after a wild time at Larry's, students would ring this bell dedicated to his enthusiasm. His spirit still lives today. He had others on campus with him, starting in 1965, who chose to be unforgettable in their own ways. Many inequalities existed in the world, but as we learn in the Bible, big obstacles can be overcome. You just have to have a very particular set of skills. It's possible with a rock and a stick and a funny game hardly anybody had ever heard of. In the 60s, years before they even thought of attending college, boys and girls spent days on the playgrounds, focused on hitting the ball, running the bases, driving in for a layup, in the park or in a gym, laughing and playing. Boys and girls together, dreaming of playing ball when they grew up. And one little girl dreamt of
play third base for the St. Louis Cardinals. I honestly did, because I was a Cardinal fan ever since I was old enough to say Stan the Man.
I mean, I used to open the gym up and lock the gym up. Back in those days, I took the keys home. I was the last one in the gym, and I was the first one there in the morning.
But I would be their catcher, and I would be their pass route runner, all those kind of things. I would pitch, and they would get the hit. I didn't get hit.
I know, I loved it, because, growing up playing with the guys, that's how I got my toughness. I couldn't be out there being a girl and crying. It's like, no.
Few women could play on teams in high school, so when they arrived here, they wanted more. In the mid-1960s, Quincy College fielded men's sports teams, but women were limited to intramurals.
The idea that girls could play sports and play it well had already been established, and their desire to play.
Charlene Taylor's journey started at Holly High School in Michigan, then Eastern Michigan University, and one graduate year at Mizzou. She was hired in the Quincy College Physical Education Department in 1965, and change was on the way.
That just took so much courage. And, what do the old-timey folks say, gumption, to do that. And it had to be a passion that she had.
Charlene wanted the women in Quincy to be able to experience the same kind of competition she enjoyed at Eastern Michigan University. Maybe the administration never actually said yes, and maybe they never said no either.
I'm not really sure I had any communication. It was one of those, let's ask for forgiveness and not permission.
In the 70s, we're more thinking about you should be privileged that you have this opportunity. And but we did have that opportunity, and we took advantage of it.
But I have to give them credit, because they did give us time. They did give us facilities. They did let us, participate. So
Quincy College was a fun place to attend. Women often selected the college because it was either a Catholic university or because there was a physical education major. In fact, Quincy was only one of 4 Catholic colleges in the country to offer the phys ed major.
At that time, I was looking for a small co-ed university that had a physical education major for women. I knew it was a very difficult thing to find those schools.
I could figure, there's a major where I can do this and they can do this for a living. Yeah, I'm going to do it.
Ann Bergman had helped the phys ed program grow. Together, Charlene and Ann would guide all the Hawkettes' education.
They were like 2 different personalities, and I think they really blended well together.
Anytime we did anything in the phys ed classes, she and Mrs. Peter were both together.
And people like Mrs. Bergman and Mrs. Peter would tell you, you have this opportunity, make the most of it.
Father Gabriel was the president at that time. Later on, he asked Charlene if she was trying to sneak women's sports into the school. Of course she was. As the head of the physical education department, John Ortworth left the door open for the Hawkettes to come through. As was the case for many QC staff members, he was focused on all of his staff obligations and his own coaching duties.
And it wasn't something we'd had long conversations on before I was hired or even after, but it was just something that I thought I would do. And I probably said to him, "Hey, John, I'm going to call the phys ed majors together and see if they want to play some field hockey.
Anything else? I mean, of all sports, field hockey, you know.
But the women didn't know what they didn't know. Field hockey was a whole new experience.
When I first asked, I've been told that one person raised her hand and said, you know, she had heard of the sport. None of the others ever had.
I didn't even know that there was a game of field hockey. I had never heard of it.
In order to get players, Charlene asked, or told, the phys ed majors that they needed to show up. Then at practice, Charlene asked her players to bring a friend.
She says, you're going out for field hockey, aren't you? That's the way that a lot of them said. They don't ask, do you want to go out for you're going out, aren't you?
You know, she just kept bugging me. And I'm like, okay, I'll come out.
These women knew the game of basketball and certainly knew softball, but field hockey was selected to create excitement in the beginning of the 1965 school year.
I fell in love with that sport. I had played softball, basketball, baseball, volleyball as it was at that point in time, but I had never played a sport that excited me or I got just a real thrill out of playing.
So when I got to play, there wasn't anything that was going to stop me.
Oh yeah, we could cut loose. Oh yeah, it's nothing like hitting something. It's great.
I think the people that were playing it were extremely excited. They wanted an outlet. They wanted something outside, as I say, the classroom.
It was a start. It was a beginning. And I think once the genie was out of the bottle, there was no way getting it back in.
In the movie A League of Their Own, Tom Hanks told his star catcher, if it was easy, everybody would do it. It's the hard that makes it great.
And all the running, oh my gosh, the running was exhausting and the field was so long.
It was a tough game physically, and there was a slow learning curve mentally.
I just decided myself, if I'm near the ball and the whistle blows, I'm turning around and going the other way.
If the women wanted a chance to battle, this was the sport.
It was so exciting because it was outside and it was kind of rough. You know, it was a rough game.
It was the one sport where there was some physical contact. I really liked bumping into people and going after the puck with 2 or 3 other people.
There's no doubt that the women of the 60s and 70s were quite happy to be playing, but they were driven to compete.
I think every time we walked down the field, we were going to win.
If you don't have that mindset when you play a sport, you shouldn't be playing a sport.
I love the teamwork, and I think that's one of the things that Char always stressed was the teamwork, working together, being part of something other than yourself.
You need to come every day, 125% every day.
Wins were tough to come by. In year one, in 1965, the Hawkettes had 2 losses, and in 1966, they had a tie and a win. Field hockey gave the women new opportunities. Later that year, basketball and tennis followed. Now, women were competing with and taking on other schools for the first time.
And I think if you look across the whole athletic spectrum, we were very competitive and we pushed to the next level.
When available, practices were on the IM field. Back then, everything was on that field.
It was hard and it was dirty. It was really dirty. I mean, you were knocking that ball in the dirt and all of us would get dirty.
And then you'd have the people that would walk through because they didn't know it was somebody's practice.
You'd have people go by and, you know, catcall us or sit there. We had a lot of fans, though. People would watch us, but especially when we were running, they were like, keep running, keep running.
One year I told you they had planted corn. You know, I guess they didn't think they were planting corn, but they hadn't cleaned out whatever they were putting the grass seed in.
Facilities were unique nearly every place they played.
Where we went to Culver Stockton and they had the light pole in the alley and the field went straight and then it ducked about 10 feet to the side and then it went straight again.
And the funniest part, and you guys are going to get mad at me, but that's okay, their hairdos. Oh my God. How they ran up and down the field with those big old bouffants on.
Typically, a field hockey stick was between 35 and 38 inches long, with a width between 4.3 and 4.8 inches. It has a curved blade on the bottom. Players could only hit the ball on the flat side of that blade.
I said, what's with the sticks? I said, because I played hockey and, you know, we use both sides of the stick. Well, you can only use one side. I'm like, really? You have to turn a certain way, and you can only use the stick a certain way, and it's like, God, I don't know if I could do this.
They'd be like, silly, you know, because I get called for turning the wrong way, and they'd be like, I said, well, I'm left-handed, you know, this isn't just going to go away.
It was quite a sight. Players running full speed down the field, juggling that ball that was as hard as a rock, with players swinging those sticks.
Sweet, sweet, sweet girl. She was a freshman. She hauled up, hit that ball, boom! I went flat on the ground, blood everywhere.
I went down once, I think it was at McMurray College. I mean, I got really hit hard with a stick, you know, because the shin guards they shouldn't call them shin guards, they were ankle guards.
The phrase dress for success had not been coined yet, but field hockey players had a few comments of their own regarding the team uniform.
They were awful. They were awful.
We were really excited because it was I think it was in our second year, that someone was going to help us get a uniform.
And this was the cutting edge of uniforms where it had the zipper up the front and it was like culottes, and it was that ugly orange and brown, and you know, you bring your uniform home, wash it, then you have to iron the stupid blouse.
Once you washed them, I can remember us standing there and having two people pulling them to stretch them to make them, you know, stretched so we could get in them. They have the brown and gold on. I think it really elevated it without us even knowing. But I'm really very proud to step into it.
So we played it in basketball and in volleyball and field hockey. So those uniforms got some use. But I thought it was great when we got it.
I can remember the first time we were putting those on, and it was like, whoa, little hawks.
The practice field and times weren't great, but who cared? The uniforms weren't great, but who cared? Travel, meals, equipment, just a few bumps in the road.
For all intent purposes, at least the first 5 years or so was pay to play.
And there was never money. There was never money.
Slow progress often meant regular change. Including intramurals, women's teams were associated in some capacity with the Women's Recreation Association, the American Association of Health Education and Recreation, the National Association of Physical Education for College Women, and the Division of Girls in Women's Sports. In 1971, the Hawkettes joined the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics for Women. In 1982, they became part of NAIA District 20, and now they are part of NCAA Division II. Few players worried about that constant change. Just tell them what time the game started.
I don't really recall times when they would say, well, Mrs. Peter, why don't we have what the men have?
And it was exciting. It was exciting to please her because we were accomplishing something.
It was a difficult time for them. There was rough roads, bumpy, kind of similar to some of the fields we played on.
I'm thankful to those people that got it started because we were able to play.
I played in 74, my freshman year. The players had played in 65, and remembering what was going on way back then, I just give them a lot of respect.
True equality became possible in 1972 with the passing of Title IX, but nothing changed overnight. It has taken years for progress to occur.
It was something very difficult for the administration to think about what equal was.
I think it was the beginning of junior years when Title IX passed. Of course, we expected everything to change right away, which it didn't.
On the field, the athletes were learning a brand new game, but Charlene made sure the lessons didn't stop there.
Well, now that I look back on it, she was only 6 years older than I was. But in my eyes, you know, she was an adult, she was a professor, she was the coach.
All the time. Every time we would have practice, she would talk about what she was doing and what she hoped we would do and what we were going to do next.
I think Char was Quincy College.
She ties that all together.
As small as she is, she just carries herself like a much larger person and commands the room. You know, when she's there, you know that she's there.
She always had this look, as my mom did too. I always called it the mom look, like, okay, you know, you better not do that, or you better stop that, or, you know.
After all these years, and even during their busy college days, the players always noticed Shar would have time for the important things in life.
If somebody got hurt or if something sad happened in their life, you know, there was that compassion there. But then it was back again.
She had 4 children, I had 3, and I don't know how she did it. I really don't know how she did it.
Most opponents played many more games than those early teams, and it took Quincy a while to make up the difference in their lack of experience. Finally, in 1973, they won 4 and lost 4, then split 6 games in 1974. In 12 years, the program won 15 games, lost 37, and had 11 ties. Sharlene had coached the first 10 years, and her sister Janice covered the last 2. After the 1976 season, the program was shut down. In the 12-year history of the program, Jessie Harris had proven herself as an elite player. In all, there were 75 goals scored in QC history, and Jessie had 26 of them. She certainly did her part to build the program.
If it comes down to the money, then a lot of things get kicked to the wayside. And field hockey was one of them, I guess.
Yeah, it was a very busy time. Title IX had been enacted in '72. There were other things happening. All of the sports seasons were getting longer. Everybody was getting pressed for time. It began at a time when it started, and it ended as it had begun. Its time had come, both ways, to start and to end.
Some of the field hockey players who came along in the 70s didn't fully understand what the first players had experienced, but as a whole, players from all 12 years share a common bond.
Intestinal fortitude to, go above and beyond what their classroom responsibilities were. Probably most of them worked somewhere also.
That were changing and causing a revolution as well as the evolution of women in sports.
Well, it was the first. It laid the groundwork. It was the foundation.
Yeah, I might read up on it before.
Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again.
These are some of the legends of the program. They were among the first to dream of equal opportunities for women, and instead of just dreaming, they took action. Each step forward was into a new frontier. On their backs, each step carried generations of little girls. They did most of this without making big statements or loud protests. They just kept playing.
When they talk about us, being pioneers, we didn't see that at all.
Really? Huh, pioneers. Yet again. Wow, I didn't know that.
These women established the place that women have a right and have a place on some type of field of experience, be it a basketball floor, a volleyball floor, softball, whatever.
Today, some women athletes see their own problems, but often it's not comparable to what the women of the 60s and 70s went through.
Okay, I don't want to hear it. I wish I had the stuff you have. I wish I had a fraction of the stuff you had.
I think I left in general from Quincy with the thought that with the proper preparation, I could do anything.
I tend to think it was can do, did do, kept going and doing, those 3 things.
When the Hawkettes talk about their field hockey teams, they don't talk about individual plays or final scores. There's not much focus on the who, what, when, where, and why. But they loved the how, especially how hard they played and how they laughed. They don't think of overall wins and losses.
No. I don't think it can be measured at all by wins and losses. I think it's measured by the individuals that established it, that played it. They all took something away from that program and that experience, but they left something there at Quincy College too.
And now, nearly 55 years later, each woman has a little Quincy College in her blood.
Absolutely. I never had any regrets about that at all. Quincy was very good to me.
But it prepared me for the world. And that's what I appreciate about it. It prepared me for my life going forward.
the idea of what women could do, yeah, they didn't stop. They just kept, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? We had the direction, we had the parameters, and we just kept pushing them out.
We didn't have everything, but they showed us that we could, no matter what it was, we could figure it out, find the information, and be successful.
I think love for the school, love for SHAR, love for athletics will always be there with this group.
It's a piece of Quincy University history. Field hockey, 127 women, 12 seasons. They dreamt it, they saw it, they played it like nobody ever had before.